I was drowning in debt, desperate, and ready to do anything to survive. That's when Aiden Carter walked into my life. Cold, calculated, filthy rich. This wasn't just survival anymore. It became something deeper, something dangerous. If you've ever made a deal you couldn't walk away from, you'll understand. Like, share, and subscribe for more twisted love stories that start where desperation ends. The eviction notice felt like sandpaper in my trembling hands. 30 days. That's all I had left before I'd be sleeping in my car. If I could even keep that. The medical bills from Mom's cancer treatment had devoured everything. My savings, my credit, my hope. At 25, I was drowning in a sea of debt that seemed to have no shore. If you've ever felt like the universe was conspiring against you, you'll understand why I was sitting in that upscale bar at 2 a.m., nursing a drink I couldn't afford, contemplating decisions I never thought I'd consider. That's when he walked in. Aiden Carter moved through the dimly lit space like he owned it. Which, I later learned, he actually did. Tall, sharp-suited, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to catalog everything in milliseconds. He carried himself with a kind of confidence that only comes from never having to check your bank balance before buying coffee. Our eyes met across the room, and something electric passed between us. I should have looked away, should have finished my drink, and left. Instead, I held his gaze and watched as he made his way toward my corner booth. Mind if I sit? His voice was deeper than I expected, with a slight rasp that sent an unexpected shiver down my spine. Free country, I replied, trying to sound casual despite the way my heart was hammering. He slid into the seat across from me, and I caught a hint of expensive cologne mixed with something uniquely him. You look like someone who's carrying the weight of the world. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. More like the weight of about 60,000 in medical debt. But who's counting? Something shifted in his expression. Interest, maybe. Or calculation. What would you do to make that disappear? The question should have sent me running. Instead, I found myself leaning forward. Anything legal? What about something unconventional? Aiden Carter wasn't just wealthy. He was billionaire wealthy. Tech mogul, real estate empire. The kind of man who appeared on magazine covers with headlines like America's Most Eligible Bachelor. Sitting across from him in his penthouse office 3 days later, I felt like Alice tumbling down the rabbit hole. Let me be clear about what I'm offering, he said, his fingers steepled as he leaned back in his leather chair. The city sprawled below us through floor-to-ceiling windows, making me feel both powerful and insignificant. 1 year, you'll live here, accompany me to social events, and help me navigate certain personal obligations. My mouth went dry. What kind of personal obligations? My board of directors believes a settled personal life would be beneficial for the company's image. My grandmother won't stop trying to set me up with suitable wives. And frankly, I need someone who won't get any romantic notions about what this arrangement actually is. The contract he slid across the mahogany desk was thick, filled with legal language that made my head spin. But the number at the bottom made everything else fade into background noise. Enough to pay off my debts, start over, maybe even go back to school. Why me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He studied me with those piercing dark eyes. Because you need this as much as I do. Because you're honest about your desperation, which means you won't try to complicate things. And because what? Because I saw something in your eyes that night in the bar. A fire that hasn't been completely extinguished yet. I respect that. I stared at the contract, pen heavy in my hand. One signature would change everything. but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was signing away more than just a year of my life. "What aren't you telling me?" I asked. A smile ghosted across his lips, the first real expression I'd seen from him. "Smart question. The truth is, Jake Morrison, this arrangement might save us both. But it's also going to test us in ways neither of us expects." Aiden's penthouse was a monument to controlled luxury. Everything had its place, from the sleek modern furniture to the carefully curated art collection. It felt more like a museum than a home, beautiful but untouchable. "Your room," he said, opening a door to reveal a space larger than my entire former apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city, and the attached bathroom looked like something from a luxury hotel. "This is incredible," I breathed, running my fingers along the silk comforter. "The closet is already stocked. My assistant took the liberty of selecting appropriate attire for various occasions. We have dinner with my grandmother tomorrow night." The casual way he mentioned reshaping my entire wardrobe should have irritated me. Instead, I found myself curious about the man who paid such attention to details while maintaining such careful distance. That first night, I lay in the enormous bed, staring at the ceiling and wondering what I'd gotten myself into. The silence in the penthouse was profound. No traffic, no neighbors, just the whisper of climate control and the distant hum of the city below. I was almost asleep when I heard it. Piano music, soft and melancholy, drifting from somewhere in the apartment. The melody was hauntingly beautiful, filled with a longing that seemed to echo through the carefully controlled space. Following the sound, I found Aiden at a baby grand piano in a room I hadn't seen before. His jacket was off, sleeves rolled up, and his usually perfect composure had given way to something raw and unguarded. His fingers moved across the keys with practiced ease, pulling a motion from the instrument that I hadn't known existed beneath his cold exterior. He must have sensed my presence because he stopped abruptly, his hands freezing above the keys. "I'm sorry," I said quickly. "I heard the music and—" "It's fine." He stood, his walls already rebuilding. "I sometimes play when I can't sleep. I'll be more considerate of the noise." It wasn't noise. It was beautiful. What was the piece? Something flickered in his eyes. Something I wrote a long time ago. "You compose?" "Used to." He moved past me toward the door. "We should both get some rest. Tomorrow will be challenging enough." As he left, I remained in the music room, still feeling the ghost of that melody. For the first time since signing the contract, I wondered if there might be more to Aiden Carter than the cold businessman he presented to the world. Eleanor Carter was nothing like I expected. Aiden's grandmother was tiny, sharp-eyed, and possessed the kind of understated elegance that comes from decades of high society. She also saw right through our charade within the first 5 minutes. "So, Jake," she said over the appetizer course at an exclusive restaurant that didn't even have prices on the menu, "tell me how you met my grandson." I launched into the story we'd rehearsed, a chance meeting at a charity gala, shared interests in art and technology. But Eleanor's knowing smile told me she wasn't buying a word of it. "Interesting," she mused, sipping her wine. "And what do you do for work?" The question I'd been dreading. "I'm between opportunities right now, exploring some new directions." Her eyes twinkled with amusement. How refreshingly honest. Aiden's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Grandmother." "Oh, relax, darling. I like him." She reached across the table and patted my hand. "He's the first person you've brought to dinner who doesn't look like they're calculating the value of my jewelry." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of stories about Aiden's childhood, family history, and gentle interrogation disguised as conversation. But it was the moment when Eleanor excused herself to powder her nose that changed everything. "She knows," I said quietly. "Of course she knows. My grandmother didn't build a social empire by being naive. Then why is she playing along?" Aiden was quiet for a long moment, studying his wine glass. "Because she's hoping that pretending might become real. She's been hoping that for a very long time." Something in his voice made me look at him more closely. "Has it ever become real, I mean?" "No." The word was sharp, final. "It hasn't." But as Eleanor returned to the table, regaling us with stories about her late husband's business adventures, I caught Aiden watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. For just a moment, his carefully maintained armor seemed to slip, revealing something vulnerable underneath. Living with Aiden was like sharing space with a ghost. He left early, returned late, and when we were in the same room, he maintained a polite distance that felt more isolating than hostility would have. Our interactions were choreographed, professional, empty, except for the music. Every few nights, I'd hear the piano. Always late, always when he thought I was asleep. The melodies were different each time, but they all carried the same thread of longing, of something lost or never found. I began to look forward to those moments, lying in the dark and letting his music wash over me like a secret shared across the silence. 3 weeks into our arrangement, everything changed. I was in the kitchen making coffee when Aiden burst through the front door. Tie askew, hair disheveled, fury radiating from every line of his body. He didn't see me at first, just headed straight for the bar and poured himself 3 fingers of whiskey. "Rough day?" I asked quietly. He spun around, startled. For a moment, his guard was completely down, and I saw exhaustion in his eyes, disappointment, something that looked dangerously close to defeat. "The Meridian deal fell through," he said finally. 6 months of negotiations, and they pulled out at the last minute for a competitor's offer. "I'm sorry." He laughed bitterly. "Are you? This affects your situation too, you know. My financial portfolio isn't infinite." The comment stung, a reminder of exactly why I was there. Of course, I forgot my place for a moment. Something shifted in his expression. "Jake, I didn't mean." "Yes, you did." I set down my coffee cup with careful precision. "And you're right. This is a business arrangement. I shouldn't have pretended otherwise." I started to leave, but his voice stopped me. "The music doesn't help anymore." I turned back. He was staring into his whiskey glass, shoulders bowed under invisible weight. "What?" "The piano. It used to help when things got complicated. But lately," he met my eyes, and I saw something raw there. "Lately, nothing helps." The smart thing would have been to offer some generic comfort and retreat to my room. Instead, I found myself moving closer. "When did you start playing?" 7. My mother insisted on lessons before she died. Said music would save my soul when nothing else could. His laugh was hollow. She was an optimist. What happened to her? Car accident. Drunk driver. He drained the whiskey. My father never recovered. Threw himself into work. Left me with nannies and boarding schools. I learned early that depending on people only leads to disappointment. The pieces of Aiden Carter began to fall into place. The emotional distance, the careful control. The walls built so high that even he couldn't see over them anymore. "Is that why you chose me?" I asked. "Because you knew I was too desperate to disappoint you?" His eyes met mine, and for a moment, the space between us felt charged with possibility. "I chose you because you were honest about needing saving. Most people lie about that. And you? Do you need saving?" The question hung in the air between us. Then his expression shuddered, walls sliding back into place. I should let you get some sleep. We have the Morrison Charity Gala tomorrow night. That's my last name too. I know. He was already moving toward his room. Good night, Jake. As his door closed behind him, I realized that something fundamental had shifted between us. The careful distance we'd maintained was starting to crack, and I wasn't sure either of us was prepared for what might happen when it finally broke. The Morrison Family Foundation Gala was everything I'd expected from high society. Crystal chandeliers, designer gowns, conversations that danced around power and influence without ever addressing them directly. What I hadn't expected was how natural it felt to have Aiden's hand on the small of my back as we navigated the crowd. "Smile," he murmured near my ear as we approached a group of his business associates. "You look like you're attending a funeral." "Maybe I am," I replied under my breath. "The funeral of my dignity." I felt rather than saw his surprised smile. "There's that fire I mentioned." The evening progressed in a blur of introductions and small talk. I found myself falling into an easy rhythm with Aiden, our conversation flowing naturally despite the artificial circumstances. When someone asked about our relationship, he would rest his hand on my shoulder, and I'd feel an unexpected warmth spread through me. "You're good at this," he said as we swayed together during the customary dance portion of the evening. "At what?" "Lying." "At being real in an unreal situation." His thumb brushed against my knuckles where our hands were joined. "Most people lose themselves in this world. You've somehow managed to stay exactly who you are." "And who am I?" He was quiet for a moment, studying my face as we moved to the music. "Someone who cares more about others than himself. Someone who sacrifices for the people he loves. Someone who deserves better than the hand life dealt him." The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. "Aiden." "Mr. Carter." A booming voice interrupted us. Richard Blackstone, Aiden's main business rival, approached with a predatory smile. "And this must be the famous Jake Morrison. I've heard so much about you." Something in Blackstone's tone set off warning bells. Aiden's hand tightened almost imperceptibly on mine. "Richard," Aiden said coolly. "Enjoying the evening?" "Immensely. Though I have to say, I'm surprised to see you here together, especially given Jake's interesting financial history." My blood ran cold. Aiden went very still beside me. "I'm not sure what you're implying," Aiden said, his voice deadly quiet. "Oh, nothing untoward. Just that it's fascinating how quickly young Jake's debts were resolved right around the time you two became inseparable. Such a romantic story." The words hit like physical blows. Around us, conversations were slowing as people sensed drama. I could feel the weight of curious stares, the whispered speculation that would follow us for the rest of the evening. "If you have something to say, Richard, say it plainly." Blackstone's smile widened. "I'm just admiring your charitable nature, Aiden. Though I suppose everyone has their price, don't they?" The implication hung in the air like poison. I felt exposed, humiliated, reduced to exactly what Blackstone was suggesting. But before I could respond, Aiden stepped forward. "Be very careful about your next words," he said, his voice carrying a threat that made Blackstone's smile falter. "Because if you're suggesting what I think you are, this conversation is going to end very badly for you." "Aiden," I said quietly, touching his arm. "It's okay. Let's just go." But he didn't move, didn't break eye contact with Blackstone. "No one insults you. No one reduces what we have to a transaction. And no one questions your worth in my presence." The fierce protectiveness in his voice sent shock waves through me. This wasn't acting for the crowd. This was real, raw emotion that he wasn't bothering to hide. Blackstone seemed to realize he'd pushed too far. "I meant no offense," Simply making conversation. Then find someone else to converse with. As Blackstone retreated, Aiden turned to me, his eyes searching my face. "Are you all right?" I nodded, not trusting my voice, because the truth was, seeing him defend me like that had awakened something I wasn't prepared to feel, something that made our arrangement infinitely more complicated. "Let's get some air," he said, guiding me toward the terrace. Outside, away from the crowd and prying eyes, we stood in silence. The city sparkled below us, but all I could think about was the way Aiden had looked when Blackstone insulted me. Like he was ready to tear the man apart with his bare hands. "You didn't have to do that," I said finally. "Yes, I did." "Why?" He turned to face me, and in the moonlight, I could see something in his expression that made my breath catch. Because somewhere along the way, this stopped being pretend for me. His words hung between us like a bridge I wasn't sure I was brave enough to cross. The terrace was empty except for us, the party's noise a distant hum through the glass doors. "Aiden, I know what you're going to say. That this complicates things. That we have a contract, an arrangement. That getting emotionally involved is exactly what we agreed not to do." He was right. Those were exactly the words forming in my throat. But looking at him in the moonlight, his carefully maintained composure finally cracked open. I found I couldn't say them. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I wake up looking forward to seeing you. That I've started making excuses to come home early. That listening to you laugh has become the best part of my day." He ran a hand through his hair, destroying its perfect styling. "I'm saying that when Blackstone insulted you in there, I wanted to destroy him for it. My heart was racing, torn between hope and terror. This isn't what either of us signed up for." "No, it isn't." He stepped closer. Close enough that I could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. "But it's what's happening anyway. And what happens when this year is over? When the contract expires and I go back to my real life? I don't know." His honesty was brutal and beautiful. "I've never been in this situation before. I've never wanted someone to stay." The admission hung between us, vulnerable and terrifying. I thought about all the reasons this was a bad idea. The power imbalance, the temporary nature of our arrangement, the very real possibility that I was just a novelty that would wear off once he'd conquered the challenge. But I also thought about the music he played when he couldn't sleep, the way he defended me tonight, the glimpses of the man beneath the billionaire's armor. "Jake." My name on his lips was almost a prayer. Tell me I'm not imagining this connection between us. I should have been smart. Should have stepped back, re-established boundaries, protected what was left of my heart. Instead, I found myself moving closer. "You're not imagining it." Something shifted in his expression, relief and desire, and something deeper all mixing together. "Then what do we do about it?" "I don't know," I whispered. "But I know I don't want to pretend anymore either." The space between us disappeared. His hand came up to cup my cheek, thumb brushing across my skin with reverent gentleness. "This changes everything," he said. "I know. There's no going back. I know." And then his lips were on mine, and the world tilted on its axis. The kiss was everything our careful distance had been keeping at bay. Desperate, tender, full of months of suppressed longing. His other arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me closer, and I melted into him like I'd been waiting my whole life for this moment. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. His forehead rested against mine, and I could see wonder in his eyes, as if he couldn't quite believe what had just happened. "Jake," he started, but I pressed my finger to his lips. Don't analyze it or list all the reasons it's complicated. Just let us have this moment." He pressed a soft kiss to my fingertip, then pulled back to study my face. What happens now? Now we figure it out as we go. Together? Together. The word felt like a promise, like a leap of faith we were taking hand in hand. As we stood there on the terrace, the city lights twinkling below us like fallen stars, I realized that our careful arrangement had become something neither of us had planned for. It had become real. The ride home was charged with a tension that had nothing to do with anger and everything to do with the acknowledgement crackling between us. Aiden's driver maintained professional silence as we sat in the back of the car, the space between us on the leather seat feeling both impossibly wide and dangerously narrow. Neither of us spoke until we were back in the penthouse, the door closing behind us with a soft click that seemed to echo in the sudden intimacy of the space. "Would you like a drink?" Aiden asked, his voice carefully neutral. "Are you nervous?" I asked instead. He paused in the act of loosening his tie. Terrified, actually. His honesty disarmed me. Good. I thought I was the only one. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "What exactly are we terrified of?"